Once upon a time, there was a man named Matthew, a kind-hearted and gentle soul. Unfortunately, his family was killed by a bee one summer day. Nobody understood what had happened, how a bee could be powerful enough to take the lives of an entire family. Matthew was inconsolable. He felt a deep rage and sorrow inside him that he had never experienced before. He vowed revenge against the bee, which he saw as a cowardly murderer. For 50 long years, Matthew dedicated himself to hunting for the bee. He searched all over the world, hoping to find the bee and make it pay for its crimes. Finally, after all of those years, he finally found the bee and confronted it. He was furious. He demanded to know why the bee had done this, and why it had taken away his family. But instead of being met with anger and violence, the bee had a very different response. It seemed that the bee viewed it all as a prank, a joke gone wrong. It asked Matthew to forgive it, and along with that, to be best friends. Though Matthew was hesitant, he eventually decided to forgive the bee and offer his friendship. So after 50 years of searching, catharsis and revenge came in the form of friendship. Matthew and the bee were a match made in heaven, and the two of them were seen together all around the world, laughing and spreading joy wherever they went. Luis was a beloved figure in the town, the embodiment of justice and heroic courage. He had been admired and respected for generations, and everyone had been inspired by his accomplishments in the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. But there was one person who was jealous of Luis's success and wanted to emulate him, a man known as the Sigma Giga Chad. He was often seen around town, occasionally engaging in odd activities such as eating people's dogs just to prove how powerful he was. The people in the town were horrified by the idea of eating a dog, and so they got together and confronted Sigma Giga Chad, asking him to stop. He apologized profusely and the people eventually forgave him, but 2 minutes later, something unthinkable happened. Sigma Giga Chad's body suddenly convulsed, his skin turning pale. Realizing he was stricken by a deadly illness, the people called an ambulance, praying for his recovery. But they were too late. 2 minutes later, Sigma Giga Chad passed away from cancer. The people of the town were devastated by his death, and they began to question their decision to forgive. Although Sigma Giga Chad had obviously been feeling a little silly, no one had expected him to succumb to such a terrible fate. The legacy of Luis the Super Mario Bros. Hero may have been preserved, but the price paid was way too high. It was a lesson that no one in the town would ever forget: forgiveness doesn't always mean the end of the story. Mircea was an old man who had been the king of his kingdom for many years. He was known for his ruthlessness and his willingness to do whatever it took to keep his kingdom safe. He was feared by many, but respected by all. One day, Mircea heard about a new video game called Grand Theft Auto. He was intrigued by the idea of being able to do whatever he wanted in a virtual world, so he decided to give it a try. At first, Mircea was a bit overwhelmed by the game. He had never seen anything like it before. But as he kept playing, he started to get the hang of it. He soon found himself enjoying the game and the freedom it gave him. But then something strange happened. Mircea started to take his newfound freedom a bit too far. He began to kill people in the game for no reason other than his own amusement. He even started to take pleasure in it. The people of his kingdom were horrified by his behavior. They had never seen their king act this way before. But Mircea didn't care. He was having too much fun. Eventually, the people of the kingdom had enough. They overthrew Mircea and put a new king in his place. Mircea was never seen again. The people of the kingdom never knew what happened to Mircea, but they all knew one thing for sure: he had become a monster because of Grand Theft Auto. The child had no family and no one to call his own. He was homeless, living in the sewers beneath the wings of Mika. Mika was a man who had made a living scavenging the streets at night, picking up whatever scraps he could find. At first, the child was scared of Mika and the other kids who lived there. But soon, he grew to like them and his life in the sewers felt like home. They would play games, tell stories, and watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to pass the time. But one day, danger came to the sewers. Mika's enemy had tracked him down and crept in through the tunnels. Before the kids knew what was happening, he had killed the child. They all watched in horror as their friend died in front of them. Mika and his kids were desperate for food, so they decided to roast the child's body. They ate it and, amazingly, it lasted them weeks. The other kids still remembered the one time they shared watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles together and vowed never to forget the child and what had happened to him. They all put a small flower where the child used to sleep, to honor his memory.